I think my favorite is definitely two, which is Wrath of Khan, which the first one was fantastic in its own right. It wasn't as much a Star Trek movie almost as it was kind of a 2001 hybrid. It's very pretty, incredible shots. Great vision. However, it didn't really fit.
Yeah.
And then when two came along, it really seems like they got back to what it was, and it really seems like it established the movies. You see, an old villain come back. You see, a lot of character development in Kirk and the rest of the crew as they've advanced in their careers, but they're back out in space doing their thing, and something terrible happens, and they're fighting for their lives.
And I think just to kind of go in with more of, I guess, the rumor control of the new Star Trek, I know that one of the new characters that they're introducing is who is in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, is Carol Marcus, actually. So who is, of course, Kirk's girlfriend at a certain point. They have a child in the original series, and that's kind of becomes a real part of the storyline of both 2 and 3, of course. So I guess that's kind of another reason maybe that fans are going towards that idea that maybe this villain is Khan. But again, we don't know. That could be just Carol Marcus, and so we needed a character, we needed a love interest maybe for Kirk, so we just used someone from a name from that original movie series. So yeah, maybe that's another reason the fans are kind of going towards that. But again, May will tell, who that villain is. So, and I have to agree, Star Trek II, one of my favorites. Between that one and 6, which incidentally are the same director, Nick Myers, and the same writer who did both, and just a great storyline, great villain, a villain you almost love to hate, right? Yeah, because Ricardo Montalban, who played Khan, did such a great job.
And and it really feels like he kind of, whether he went back and watched the old episode that this all came from a bunch, or whether he was just able to kind of just jump right back into that character. And I mean, having watched a year or so ago, one of my friends that hadn't seen both, we watched Space Seed, which is where Khan comes from in the original series, and then we watched the movie, and it really feels like he just kind of flash forwarded a couple years, because the Ricardo Montalban's character is just really similar. I mean, there are some little things, having seen it again, that are continuity issues, but that's to be expected. But he just really captured that character again and did a really good job.
Been able to pick it up, I think, 20 years, maybe even later after playing that, to reprise that, and then to be in such a good shape as he is, and to be able to command, what he was doing, and you really, at that point, can, sympathize with Kirk in this whole conflict that they're having, that he is, he hates this man. He absolutely does. You marooned me on this planet, and so he's out for vengeance. He's out to get Kirk, and, to seeing how Kirk has to deal with this, how he has to deal with this villain who's almost suicidal in the way that he will try and end Kirk's life. So, and then of course he's got a son to think about on the ship, and the whole crew there to protect at the same time, let alone, of course, the safety of the galaxy and yada yada, right?
Yeah.
So
the last thing you want to give is Khan a spaceship.
Yeah. And then the power of the Genesis device and all that. Yeah.
But you see, and you jump way back. You jump back to the new movie, and you mentioned the romance level of that new character coming in for Kirk, and you see in the new the Star Trek reboot, you see this relationship between Uhura and Spock that you didn't have.
Yeah.
That is only hinted at in the original series, because there's a handful of episodes where they kind of play around with that kind of kindling or starting. It doesn't really come to fruition ever that I'm aware of. But it definitely is hinted at in a handful of episodes that there is some interest there from one party to the other. So it's interesting that they really cultivated that in this new reboot. So that was interesting. Yeah,
and I think the actress who played Zoe Saldana, who played Uhura, and that did a really great job. And again, an homage to Nichelle Nichols, who played that original character, and then because that was a groundbreaking character for that time, wasn't it? To have not only an African American but an African American woman in a TV series during the '60s, when just that wasn't happening. No. You would have TV series with all African American characters and all white characters in another, and this was one that said, Gene Roddenberry knew that the future these boundaries of racism and sexism will start breaking down, and they'll have command positions on ships, and at high level positions. So, and then going even further than that, in of course they're space dwelling vessels, so there'll probably be some aliens. So then even the what I guess we would call it, the racism against different species, those kinds of boundaries broken down. So I think they kept up with that. She did a great job with that, and I think even John Cho, who did Sulu, the actor who played Chekhov, really, he couldn't understand him, and that was part of that original character's kind of just what made him interesting, wasn't it? Who else? We have Simon Pegg.
Yes.
Hilarious as Montgomery Scott. Mm-hmm. Always funny, and anything you've seen him in, like Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz. Yeah, just a ton of movies where he's hilarious in, and so that's a perfect casting decision for him.
And he did a really good job bringing that back out. Mm-hmm. And so I was really happy overall with all the casting they did.
Mm-hmm. Some surprises. Carl Urban as Bones McCoy. I wasn't expecting that, but yeah, you could buy it. You could see.
He nailed it. I mean, right off the bat, the first time you're introduced to that character, it's dead on. Mm-hmm. And for the whole movie, he's really captured the McCoy from the original series. Very opinionated, says his mind. Yeah. Very very human.
Yeah. And you see this Carl Urban, he's an action star. He was in the Lord of the Rings. He's in, like Doom and stuff. Just a very, big muscly kind of action star. And then you see him in a character that's not going to, be out there in the away missions fighting the villains or anything, but to be a lovable character in that. So let's continue on with the collectibles. We got the Next Generation movie series. Of these movies, I know there were only 4 that they came out with for the Next Generation. What would you say is your favorite?
I say I really liked First Contact. It was probably one of my favorites. It was really solid. And then if I'm remembering right, because I haven't watched those nearly as recently. Sure. I mean, Generations, they bring back some of the old. Mm-hmm. They bring Kirk in, and play with that a bit, and not exactly in a time travel kind of way, of. Yeah. It's just an interesting way they bring it together, but it's nice. It was kind of a passing of the torch at the time. Yeah. 6 ended. The Next Generation was on TV still, or was it kind of closing out? Yeah. But just a passing of the torch to the new movies, and so that was good. Those first 2 are probably my favorite, and I mean, everybody bashes, Nemesis, but I mean, really, I know very little about it, but when I saw it, I was pretty disappointed. Yeah. And so I think, that's one of the reasons we saw this new reboot is that it was,
Yeah, we hadn't had a good Star Trek movie in a while, and so, even since First Contact, which I've got to bring in the Laserdisc, man. I mean, because it's something I started getting into collections only because this is a movie. This is not a vinyl album. Because the movie is that big, this predates your DVDs. So, owning First Contact there, again, my favorite as well of that Next Generation series, just because well written, well acted, great action, great scripting. I mean, everything about it, I think, makes for a great Star Trek movie, and I think they probably could have even finished off on a strong note, with something like
this. They really could have.
Yeah. We've got Star Trek 6 from the original series there, and we've got Generations, as we were talking about, with both Kirk and Picard. I guess fans have always dreamed of putting these 2 captains together in some form or another, and we got that with Star Trek Generations. And I think this is kind of also part of that reason we didn't get to see Shatner reprising maybe any kind of time travel role as Kirk in this new Star Trek, right? Because he ends up dying in this movie. So how are we going to figure out how to get him from a future time when all the fans are going to say, well, wait a second, he died. How can you put him in a time travel with this? And so I guess kind of just to answer that, he wasn't in that. But and I think there was some talk at one point of getting him in there somehow.
There's lots of rumor and misinformation. I mean, Trekkies are typically very continuity centric.
Yes.
I mean, if you break that up or make a mistake, they're right on it because I mean they've studied it.
Yeah.
And you see the influence of Star Trek from the original series all the way through in a lot of aspects of today's technology, today's culture. I mean, you look at the iPad and it's the same. It's the pad they're using in the next generation. You look at flip phones look remarkably like communicators, and it's just there's lots of that. That ingenuity, that forward thinking from the original series that's come along in our technology as it stands.
Yes.
But so they couldn't really bring anything in. I was really hoping they do something creative, whether some sort of holographic birthday card kind of thing, which was rumored that he would do like a holographic birthday card, and Spock would show it near the end to kind of really sink that friendship in, which is one of the things that the alternate timeline Spock talks about a lot in this reboot. Yeah. And there's lots of rumor that he didn't get along with the director, or he felt slighted because he didn't get asked, or there was lots of stuff. In as far as Star Trek's concerned, when you bring up Shatner, there's a lot of he made some mistakes and didn't capitalize real well on his fandom and offended a lot of Trekkies, years and years ago. And I think he's really come around and started to appreciate it a lot more now. But
I think it's kind of hard to see when you're maybe into all the stardom that comes from a franchise like this, and then having to maybe step away from it and be like, whoa, this really did have an impact on society, on technology, on culture, and on our social interaction with each other, that it really did, and my character had this impact, even though that some people might go back and say it was bad acting, bad special effects, all this. Well, you know what, you got to look through the lens of the time it came out and of the time we're in now, and how much it's actually influenced us forward into this, like you said, how it's influenced technology, how it's still influencing other television shows after it was out, because it was really groundbreaking for its time. But it's, again, you have to almost let some time sink in. I think that's going to happen with this new series as well. It's getting some really great reviews. I think J.J. Abrams doing a great job with this. Now we're hearing the rumor, and I think it's been a confirmed rumor, J.J. Abrams is going to be part of the Star Wars sequel. The director, I believe, even of that. So probably producer, director, maybe even writing credits given to him. So that might be proving interesting.
I mean, I heard early on when that talk, everybody tosses out his name. They're like, well, this new Star Wars is coming out, and Disney bought Lucas, and so they're trying to figure out exactly what they're going to do, and everyone's like, well, J.J. Abrams can do it, and I had heard rumor whatever that he initially denied it, because that's a heck of a franchise to drop into. I mean, Star Wars is almost, with the first three movies being as controversial as they were, people either love them or hate them, and then most people, and then that George Lucas kept kind of messing with the original three that were just loved and established. That there's so much, angst might be the best word in that franchise that if I was him, I'd have been like, I've got a good thing going. I've got some of my own movies coming. I've got Star Trek, and things are great. I'm not going to step into such a volatile situation.
Yeah.
But as far as what I read an article on Kotaku about how they got J.J. Abrams to do it, and I'm pretty sure it boiled down to, I don't remember who the lady's name was. She was in charge of that division or of the acquisition of LucasArts. She basically just said, please.
Really?
Very emphatically.
Yeah.
Gave him some more stuff to look at, because apparently he'd been offered it before, and then they brought him in, and she kind of just convinced him. Just said, please take this series and run with it.
Wow.
And so I'm excited to see what they do with that.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people are like, "Oh no, Disney, they're going to Disneyfy Star Trek." But when you think about, who owns Marvel now?
Yeah.
I mean, Disney owns Marvel, and you look at the Avengers, Thor, Captain America, Iron Man. You look at those, that they've grabbed a hold of and made incredible movies off of. So I'm optimistic.
Yeah, I guess it's part of that, and only time will tell when we see it. So hopefully, maybe when we get closer to that, we can bring us both on and have a talk about that. And then maybe after Into Darkness comes out, we can see if the Star Trek franchise is only getting better from there. So we look forward to when that happens in May. I'm sure we're going to go out there and see it. So thank you so much for joining us. We're out of time at this point, but I appreciate you bringing in some of your insight on this.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you, everyone who's watching. Appreciate your time watching this, and hopefully maybe that's enlightened you a little bit, entertained you a little bit on a subject that's, like I said, near and dear to our hearts, and has really left its impact on television, on movies, on society, on a lot of things. So very much appreciate you joining us today, and let's see you next time on Reboot. Thank you.